Hello, Dan. Can you hear me? Hi, Juanita. How are you? You're muted. You can click on that little microphone to unmute.
You want to say hi?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, we can hear you now. How are y'all doing?
Whoop. Are you not hearing me?
I can hear you now, but I think we got a little bit of a delay.
Very. Oh, he's still not.
Tell him you're going to unmute.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Tell him you're going to mute. So
We're gonna mute so big confusion. Is that
Sounds good. Sounds good. Can y'all see that? All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if y'all have any questions or comments, you can use the text feature to input, or you can unmute your microphone and give me a holler that way too, okay? To start off tonight, guys, I wanted to mention to you a message I got from Brother Gary regarding the BCM. He said, I'm writing to see if you or someone in your congregation can help. We have 3 international students at Murray State who came to play soccer on the promise of a scholarship. They've started school, but the season has been canceled. And so they've lost their scholarship and they can't afford to stay in the dorm. So they've rented an apartment, but they have no furniture. And so last night they slept on the floor. So they're looking for some twin mattresses and a table and some chairs for them to eat at. And so if we know of anything, let them know. I'll let Brother Gary know and he will get you in contact with them. So if y'all know of anybody who has an extra table and chairs or some twin mattresses laying around that they could use, that would be excellent. Other than that, Dorothy Potter's surgery was this afternoon on her knee. Has anybody heard anything on that? I have not. No? Okay. Sorry, there we go. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started with a word of prayer. Father God, we thank you this evening for the opportunity we have to come together and to study together and to fellowship together. And I pray that this technology will work for us so that we can have some interaction with one another. And God, I just pray your blessings upon us, blessings upon this church, blessings upon the ministries of the church and the people. And God, I pray that as we study this tonight, that you would open our hearts to hear what you have to say to us. And God, that we would be willing to make changes that are necessary and that we would be willing to do so even if it hurts. Lord, just have your way with this time. We pray this in Jesus' holy, precious name. Amen. Okay, so Brother Dan, you and I had discussed starting this Becoming a Welcoming Church book, and so this is based off of Thom Rainer's book of the same name, same logo and everything. Thom Rainer has been pastor for over 20 years, and then he became the CEO at Lifeway, and he's now retired from that as well, and does church consulting. Of course, he's a published author of several books. These are all small books about this size. Don't take very long to read through them. And I've read several of his books, so I saw this one and I went ahead and picked it up. I actually got it for free, but it's available that we can purchase it as a church. I think it's like $8 normally per book. If we buy if we buy 20 books, it's $100. So $5 a book. And so if we have anybody who's interested in purchasing those as we're going to go through this, that is an option. If you'll just let me know, we can get those ordered. So Becoming a Welcoming Church by Thom Rainer is the study that we're going to go through. There's not actually a study that goes with it, so I'm creating this as we go. And so I apologize for that, but I have read through the book and have a good understanding, I believe, of each chapter. And so we will be going through that. The first chapter is entitled, Are We as Welcoming as We Think We Are? Are we as welcoming as we think we are? Oops, sorry, I accidentally hit the button. And so with that being said, we'll go ahead and go to that, I guess. I was thinking about what we do when we have company coming over. And so when we have company coming over, we go through when we sweep and we clean and we pick up anything that's left out, and we just tidy up the house to prepare for guests coming and preparing for whatever they may need. But also we want to present ourselves in a certain way so that our guests will want to return back to visit us. And so kind of opening question, what do you do to prepare for company coming? Thom Rainer released this video as that I'm about to play as a promotional for this book, but I think it's a good way for us to start off by watching this. So let me put this up here.
Hi there. Welcome to your church. To talk with you about becoming a more welcoming church. Back here we've got Jack and Sally and little Jack, and they're first-time guests today. Hi. You guys ready? We got a bit of a hike. Let's do it. Please. Most church members don't see their churches clearly. They think of their churches as friendly, open, welcoming. But when guests were surveyed, they typically saw church members as unfriendly, and they certainly didn't feel welcome.
Well,
The perception chasm existed because church members were indeed friendly to one another. Guests felt like they were crashing a private party. Should we get Jack checked in? For instance, while you feel your church is homely and everyone knows each other, without clear security safeguards, guests may find those same areas creepy, or worse yet, unsafe. See you in worship. The problem is, church isn't a country club. It's a place for broken people to come together and become a family. Sermon starting. Gotta be quick. In his new book, Thom Rainer has a game plan for making churches more hospitable. In all his years of consulting churches and analyzing research, he's developed a resource to help church members understand their role in becoming a welcoming church. Rainer guides readers toward a practical framework for making a difference in the lives of those that visit their churches. Churches can use becoming a welcoming church to understand and audit where they are on the spectrum between welcoming and wanting. Also, don't be boring. Check the book out, it's in there.
Well, there you go. That's what we're going to be talking about over the next little bit. I see that, Richard, you've joined us. Can you hear me, Richard? You're muted. We can't hear you. All right. Well, it's good to see you, Richard. We're going to go ahead and go on. Richard, I was just telling Dan and Juanita that we're starting this Becoming a Welcoming Church study that Thom Rainer has published. And so we've got some books. We can order some books of those, but I'm going to go through and teach basically what's in the book. Oh, I hear you.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you? Good.
So we're going to be going through this book a little bit, Becoming a Welcoming Church, that we've been kind of talking about. So the video that you came in on was a promo video that Thom Rainer had released for this, and talks about some of the things that church members are, they think they're being welcoming and friendly, and then you get the perspective of a visitor that's coming in and seeing what's off. And so, in talking about that, what is it that causes the disparity between what a church believes they are and what the visitors perceive them to be? And the answer to that, I kind of gave it away in my word there, was perception. So let me ask this. What do you see here?
I see a woman's face or a guy playing a saxophone.
Right? It could be either way. It could be either a guy playing the saxophone or a woman's face. So church members can believe strongly that their church is welcoming, but visitors can find them to be cold and unwelcoming because of perception. So here's the difference. If a church member believes, they look at their church and they believe they're friendly, it's because their perception is from the inside looking out. They do actually experience a friendly atmosphere. They experience where people know them by name. They know they've had some needs, and they ask them about those needs, and they seek to try to meet those needs, which we should. The problem is the visitors find the church unwelcoming because they're viewing from the outside looking in. They don't know the people. The people don't know them in the church. And so the needs of the visitor are rarely noticed, and much less receive some kind of response like a church member would. And so in this case, perception is reality. We would say that in the Army all the time, especially in regard to sexual harassment and assault situations. If they would say if it is perceived by someone to be sexual in nature, then it is, regardless of the intention of the people. And the same is true for us as Christians and as churches. And Gary McIntosh says this in his book: if visitors do not perceive us as friendly, then we're not. So we may be friendly to one another, but we are not friendly if visitors do not perceive us to be friendly. So we need to be welcoming. And so the question comes, well, why do we need to be welcoming? And the fact is, it's actually very important in Scripture. And so I want us to just look real quickly at Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 33 and 34. This is in the section of chapter 19 is all about the laws of holiness, and God's presenting the law to the people. And so this is very important for us as well. Verse 33. When an alien resides with you in your land, you must not oppress him. You will regard the alien who resides with you as the native born among you. You are to love him as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So God instructed the Israelites to welcome outsiders, to welcome aliens as they would a family member. Now, in the cultures around them, strangers did not enjoy any rights at all. If they were outside of their resident countries, they were treated poorly generally. Just however, they weren't given any rights. They weren't guaranteed any rights. But God told his people, told Israel to welcome these strangers and treat them as members of the family. And so strangers in Israel enjoyed many of the same rights as citizens and many of the same freedoms that citizens experienced, such as they were able to participate in the worship of Yahweh. They were able to participate in the feasts of the Israelites, and then they were guaranteed the freedoms from oppression, just like the Israelites were as well. And so the reason behind all this, the driving factor, is in verse 34. He says, you are to love them as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. The Israelites they'd been strangers in Egypt, and if you remember the story of what was going on in Egypt when they were there, originally they were treated well, but near the end they were put into forced slavery, forced to make mud bricks and to build for the Egyptians. So they were treated very poorly. Now, let me ask you this. When was the last time you walked into a church where you knew absolutely nobody?
It's been a while.
So the good thing for Chelsea and I to keep in mind is we have been from various churches. Of course, when we moved to Warner, we didn't know anybody going in the church. We didn't know anybody in the town. And so we were able to experience from a guest perspective and a visitor perspective. And I think it's important that we need to do that on occasion as church members, is to go visit a church where we don't know anybody and then come back to our church and look with fresh eyes. But the idea that of this being that we are to welcome. Jesus demonstrated God's welcoming nature when he welcomed the crowds in Luke 9:11. And in fact, it was the religious people, the Pharisees and the scribes, who criticized Jesus for welcoming sinners in Luke 15. Of course, over the past couple of weeks, we looked at the idea of hospitality toward Christians and false teachers from 2nd and 3rd John. But the word hospitality actually would be translated as love for strangers. Now, as we talked about earlier, preparing for guests, we go and we clean the house and we get ready, make the house look nice, and we maybe change out of our ratty clothes into something more presentable. My grandmother won't let anybody come in the house unless she has makeup on. So preparing for guests is important, but it's much more than just that physical, sociological process. For the church, it's grounded in theology. It's grounded in what we believe about God. Hospitality is a theological demonstration of God's grace. And so we must demonstrate the nature of God to the people that come through our doors. And we're going to demonstrate something to them when they come through our doors. It may not be God, but we hope it is. But we must demonstrate the love of God. We must demonstrate the great care that God has for them. Just like God commanded the Israelites to remember their own captivity, we also must remember what it was like for us to be in captivity to sin. We didn't understand the nature of God, but we understand the nature of people. And so when you came to a church for the first time, this church for the first time, there was somebody there who extended a welcome to you. Whether it was, if you were coming in as a child or you were coming in as an adult, somebody there welcomed you into the church. And so we must also extend that welcome to others, whether they be believers or unbelievers. We need to extend that welcome to them. And so when we welcome visitors, we open the possibility that they may welcome God into their lives. How are we doing on time? All right. Well, one thing that I want us to look at real quick and think about is the idea of a visitor or guest, and kind of compare and contrast. So visitors, you have this idea that a visitor may not be wanted. A visitor may be someone who just shows up at your doorstep, and you kind of are wondering, what are you doing? It's good to see you, but what's going on? Whereas if you have a guest, you've invited them to come, and you're expecting them. And so a visitor may just show up, but a guest is invited, and they're anticipated. You're prepared for them to come. Visitors are expected to leave at some time, but guests are expected to stay. You know what they say about visitors? After 3 days, they're about like fish. They start to stink. But when you've invited someone to be a guest in your home, you expect for them to stay. And so the bottom line coming up is, you ask a visitor, why are you here? But you express to a guest, please come back soon. And so we want to be welcoming when we want guests to come. And so I suggest maybe we need to think in terms of a different name, even just to get the right mindset of going, expecting guests in the church and not having a place for visitors, but a place for people that we have invited, guests that we're expecting to come into our service. And so one way of doing that is just to change our mindset, to be prepared to have guests coming in. And so with that being said, do y'all remember David Letterman? He had his top 10 list. So we're going to do a top 10 list. This is our top 10 list. Thom Rainer went out and did a survey in his critiques, his consultations with churches. And so these are the top 10 responses that he received on why a visitor or a guest did not return to a particular church. So we'll start with number 10. Number 10 was dirty facilities. There was comments like, there's no trash cans around, couldn't find a trash can, the bathrooms were worse than a truck stop, that the facilities were just dirty. And I don't think we have that as a problem. We take great care of our facility, but it would be beneficial to have someone walk in who's not a member and just look around and see if they see anything on occasion. Because a dirty church communicates that the church doesn't care. And we want them to know that we do care. Number 9 was wrong pew or chair. Members telling guests that, I'm sorry, you're sitting in my pew. And I thought this one had gone the way of the dinosaur, that it had expired, that people didn't do that anymore, but apparently I was wrong. This is a rude and insensitive behavior that should not exist in our churches, but It does. It's still alive, and hopefully, I haven't come across it in our church, but hopefully we won't. So number 8, a boring or bad service. Now, I wasn't surprised that this was one of them, just to be honest. What I'm surprised about is that it's only number 8. I kind of expected it to be higher up the list. But the fact of the matter is that in the digital age, we have so many resources that we can access that no church, even a small church like ours, is allowed to have the excuse that we just don't have the resources to have a decent church service. And so, boring or bad church services was number 8. Number 7, insider language. Now, I want you to maybe help critique me on this too, because if you listen to the words that are used in the service and in the announcements and in the bulletin and just listen to casual conversations as people are talking, are we using a language that outsiders don't understand? To many guests, the church is full of acronyms. It's full of a foreign language. And I'm not talking theological language, like the Bible language. I'm not talking about words like sanctification, justification. I'm talking like, would an outsider know what an RA is? Or would they be asking, why does that sign have the word gas, but the S is lowercase, while the GA is uppercase? Or we don't have a Family Life Center, but at Marion de Black, we had the FLC, the Family Life Center. Would people know what we were talking about? Even if we use the word Family Life Center, would they know what we were talking about? And so insider language was one of the top 10 responses at number 7. Number 6 is poor signage. Now, here's the reality. Once you've been in a church for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, you no longer need signs. You pretty much know where everything is. You know where to park. But guests do need signs. They get frustrated when they don't have clear instructions of where they are to park. They don't know how to enter the worship center, which I think for us is a pretty central spot, so that may not be a problem. How to find the children's area or where to find the bathrooms. And we're going to go into more detail on that in the weeks to come, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that one. The next one is a very important, and it's number 5, is a bad church website. Because here's the fact of the matter. The front door of the church is no longer the front door of the church. The front door of the church is now the website. Somebody's going to go to the website more than likely as their first place to look for information before they ever visit the church. And so in the age of social distancing, it may be the only door for some people to come in and see what's going on. But even if visitors look and they see a bad website and they go, okay, well, the website's poor, but we're going to give them a chance. They still come in with a negative disposition toward the church. And so we want to make sure that the church website is looking good and providing the information that they need. And the most critical are the physical address of the church. Is it predominant where someone can find it? And the correct times of service. Because if we're starting at 10:30 like we have been, but the church website says 11:50, then they're going to be coming in midway through the service. And I can tell you from experience that when somebody walks in from the back door of the service, everybody turns and looks at them, and so nobody wants that. Number 4 is a poor or no guest center. And I thought this was interesting. People are trained to look for a central welcome center when you go into a building. They look for an information center. And so, for instance, at the help desk, we have Glory Joy, who sits at the desk. And when they walk in, she is the first point of contact, and she will direct them or call one of us to come and help them. And so
This meeting has been upgraded by the host and now includes unlimited minutes.
Oh, cool. And so they're trained to look for a center where they will be welcomed and be able to get some information. And many churches don't have anything. I know we've got our table up front with some information, but here's something that I think was very interesting, because they may have a clear area that may be able to be found easily, but they said that if they're hesitant to go to a welcome center that is unmanned. In other words, the church might as well not have one if there's nobody working it, if there's nobody there to help guests. And we'll go into more detail on that later as well. Number 3 was poor children's areas, unsafe and unclean areas. This is the most emotional comment. If a church doesn't have clear safety and security protocols for the children, or if the area doesn't appear to be clean and sanitary, then don't expect a young family that comes in to stay. And if that is the case, they'll start telling people around the church and around their friends and everything how bad the church nursery was, or how bad the children's area was. And as word spreads, you can expect that other young families will not visit. And then number 2 was unfriendly church members. And most of the time, what happens in churches is church members retreat to their holy huddles. They'd rather be speaking to someone that they know rather than somebody they don't know. And so they bypass the people that are visitors, the guests in the church, and go talk to somebody that's a member of the church that they know. And so this, of course, comes off as being cold and unfriendly, and the people don't care about the visitor. They just care about one another. And so we don't want that to be the case. We'll talk more about that next week. But number 1, I'm prepared for some backlash on this, but realize this doesn't come from me, but comes from surveys conducted by Thom Rainer. So if you're mad, you can take it up with him. But the number 1 of the top 10 responses that were reasons they didn't return was an unfriendly and awkward stand and greet time. Some felt it was awkward. It was more for the members than for the guests. And they were either totally ignored, maybe they felt left out, or they were overwhelmed with greetings, but just superficial greetings. Like, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad you're here. And then nothing. And so we'll talk more about that in this next section, because right now we've looked at the top bad responses, reasons they won't come back, but let's look at some happy guests and why they did return. The first is, first of all, that someone asked the guest to sit with her. This lady walked in and she was looking for a place to sit, and one of the church members came up and introduced herself and said, "Hey, why don't you come sit with me?" And so this lady was able to go and sit with this other lady. And she said, "I was so glad because I was here alone and didn't know anybody. And someone came and was friendly and introduced herself and took me to sit down with her." And so they ended up going to get coffee afterwards. And so the lady came back again. The second was that people actually introduced themselves to the guests. Now, I don't know how often this happens, but I know it doesn't really happen very well in the meet and greet time, because everybody is rushing around trying to shake one another's hands. I know I'm guilty of this, but they actually introduced themselves to the guests, and it was not contrived, it wasn't routine, but it was a normal introduction, like if you were meeting somebody for the first time in any other situation. "Hi, my name is Joel. So glad you're here today. What's your name?" That kind of thing. So just being genuine, actually introducing yourself. The next was easy to navigate with clear signage. They said from the parking lot to the children's area to the worship center, everything was clearly marked and easy to navigate. So they were able to get around without having to have someone take their hand and lead them. And so that was appreciated. Clearly marked welcome center with friendly workers. There was a welcome center that made it easy for someone to get information on the church and to ask questions. Visitors, guests want to ask questions of the church, and so we need someone who's there as a representative to be able to answer those questions. Next was a great children's area, and the fact of the matter is, if you have happy kids, you're more than likely going to have happy parents. Most parents go and check the children's area first when they go to a church. I know we do that. We want to go check out the children's area first, but if it's not that, then they're not going to come back. But if it is, and the children have a good time, and the area is clean and welcoming, then they're more likely to come back. Next one was guest parking clearly visible near the entrance. In the video, it showed they had guest parking, but it was a hike to get to it. I know that when I walk out of the church on a Sunday morning and see who all's parked right up next to the door, it's all church members. And so maybe an option would be to put something out to have a place for guests, first-time guests to park. We'll talk more about that later. No stand and greet time. In fact, this one that they interviewed said, if we visit a church and they have that fake stand and greet time, we don't return. And so I thought that was interesting. We'll talk more about that next week with session 2. Members not pushy, but they really seem to care about us rather than make us just another number on the church membership roll. And I think I've been in some churches where that's definitely been the case. We're so glad to have you. Look, and they're so overly friendly, but it just seems so fake. Like we just want you to join so we have more people. And so we want to be careful not to be too pushy, but we do want to be welcoming. And then the last one there was a simple guest card. A lot of churches ask for too much information. They want your social security number and your date of birth and all the information. And especially in today's world with concerns regarding that, having just a simple guest card with the name and maybe a phone number that we can reach out to you would be much preferred. And we'll talk more about that later on as well. All right, so real quickly, some points to ponder. We kind of talked about this. When was the last time you spoke with a guest about his or her first time visit to our church? So let me ask that to you. When was the last time we spoke earlier about when was the last time you went and visited somewhere? When was the last time you spoke with someone who was a first time guest to our church about their experience? Richard, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that I didn't get to ask about their experience, but I talked to that new couple that couple that was there Sunday, sat on the back pew. They were kind of looked as though they was kind of interested in leaving pretty quick, but I did get to say hello to them.
Good. Yeah, I tried to get back to them, but by the time we dismissed and the aisle flooded, I wasn't able to get back there to them.
Yeah.
Okay, the second one there was a look at the church website from a guest perspective. And I would like for your assistance with this because I've been working on this. I want you to be honest with what you see. Is this website friendly? Is it user friendly? Is it guest friendly? And so any ideas, critiques that you have, send those to me and so I can make some changes. I'd also like to work on getting someone else trained on being able to make updates to the website as well. So if you have any thoughts on somebody to do that, or if you're interested to do that. But fact of the matter is that having a church website is now, I said earlier, it's the front door of the church. And so that's going to be the first impression. We want to make sure it's a good one. Number 3, do you think members in our church regularly invite guests, and why or why not? I would like an answer on this one. If y'all, I want to challenge you to answer this one. Do you think members in our church invite guests, and why or why not?
Nell had a guest with her Sunday.
Yes, Chelsea mentioned that Nell had a guest with her Sunday. Miss Orr was there with her. And so I know for sure that we do have some that are reaching out to invite guests. And then the last one, how do you think a guest feels in our worship service? And explain. Y'all are quiet. Well, that's all I've got for this evening. We'll look more in detail at some of the other chapters coming up. Did you guys think this worked out well? I know it's only a few of us.
Yeah, I thought it worked out okay.
I thought it worked out all right.
Were y'all able to download the app or the program easy enough?
After I
Yeah.
figured out where it was.
All right. Well, do y'all have anything else before we're dismissed?
No, sir.
All right. Well, let's close with a word of prayer and we'll be dismissed for tonight. Lord God, we thank you for the opportunity that we have for technology that works, technology that allows us to interact with one another more so than just me speaking to a screen. And so I thank you for that. And God, I pray that you'll be with us this week, that you'll strengthen us, that you would encourage us, and that when we come into service Sunday, that we would have the eyes of a guest, that we'd be looking to see what are some areas that we could work to shore up to make us a more welcoming church. God, I pray your blessings upon us, your blessings upon your church, and I pray that above all, that your name would be glorified in all that we do. Pray this in Jesus' holy and precious name by the power of your Spirit. Amen. Thank you guys for joining us.
You're welcome. You did good.
Thanks. We'll see you Sunday.
All righty. Hey, Chloe.
Hi, Mr. Cool.
She's like,